Welcome to Reading Between the Reels. I'm Matt Leader.
And I'm Craig Dickinson. Today on the show, we are looking at Jurassic Park, the original film from 1993. So, Matt, Jurassic Park, what are your overall thoughts?
The Jurassic Park franchise is something that's always been kind of close to my heart. I mean, these are movies that I kind of grew up watching. One, like the original, what we're talking about today, even two and three, I enjoy. I think two is actually like a very good film. I think it's The Lost World, and then Jurassic Park 3 is not as good, but I think it's a fun movie. And so like all of these movies, and I even like the newest ones. They fall more into that category for Jurassic Park number 3, which is just like it's a fun film. We're not really talking about the new ones, but I think it's gotten quite a bit out there with like Chris Pratt, like training the velociraptors to be pets. And I think that actually in some ways kind of spits in the face a little bit of the message of the original, which, thematically, I think is very much like nature is its own beast. Like you cannot tame nature the way that you plan to. And the original is very rich in that like message department, like thematically, visually. I think it's stunning still in a way in the visual effects department where the dinosaurs stand up amongst even modern films, modern depictions, I think, of the dinosaurs or other effects, which is, pretty amazing for a film that's as old as it is. But I think it's the characters, the character work, the direction by Spielberg is flawless, in my opinion. And I think it's fantastic. I mean, for me, this is up there with just personally, I think as close to a perfect film as you can kind of get.
Yeah, I like that. I remember, I saw this when I was in high school. I'm quite a bit older than you. I saw it in the theater, and I remember being a little bit let down by it. I liked the special effects, but the story didn't really grab me. But I just feel like it's gotten better with age. I feel like it's really aged well. We talked about the CGI was very groundbreaking CGI at the time. I think we'd had, Terminator 2 and The Abyss, a couple of James Cameron films that really kind of made use of CGI this heavily. And then, of course, there's a lot of practical effects in this as well. And you can't really tell the difference. Which is fantastic. And, I know a lot of the criticism of the film was in the performances, which I find incredibly ironic because I think that the performances are great. Spielberg is a master of letting us kind of fill in the gaps of what it is. And we're getting, the characters' faces first before we see anything. I mean, think about the raptors specifically. You don't see them. The first couple of times they're in the film, you don't see them at all. You might see an eyeball or whatnot of the creature, but really what you're seeing is reaction shots of the characters. And that's what brings you in.
Yeah.
It's a lot, thematically mentioned, it's a lot like Jaws in that way that you don't see a whole lot. And it's kind of ironic that, Spielberg actually, I saw a quote. He said he was trying to make a good sequel to Jaws on land. I was like, yeah, it really does fit in a lot of ways.
So. Yeah.
In that. And so, I think it's a beautiful film. The sound is amazing. We'll get into that as we get into it. And this is one of the first digital sound film. So it's groundbreaking in so many ways. And I just think like, because they put it together so well and it's kind of ironic. I was just thinking of John Hammond's line, spared no expense. They spent clearly a lot of money, but they spent a lot of time and were very deliberate in the way they put this together. And so that it really does, I think, still hold up very, very well.
Oh, yeah, totally. And, jumping like right into it, talking about Spielberg and kind of like what he's trying to do, it struck me, not the opening scene, but the moment when the kind of main characters are coming down onto the island in the helicopter for the first time. And Alan Grant has that moment where he's trying to buckle his seatbelt and he can't because he's got the two like female ends and he's like, it's not there. And it kind of struck me where it's like, that's actually like he's already building character because just the camera's kind of panning around and you see how everyone reacts to a relatively small problem. And Ellie is like trying to help him. She's like, reaching around trying to grab like other things. Hammond is there, who's like telling him, trying to direct. He's trying to be helpful. Ian Malcolm is sitting in the back giggling. The lawyer, what's his name?
Gennaro, I think.
Gennaro, I think it might be Gennaro. Yeah, is just kind of like sitting there, like watching, just not doing anything. But it's like even just like that little moment. And then if Alan Grant like solves it by like twisting the knot and like just tying it down, a little bit of ingenuity, just little things like that already start to like show little bits of character, and like a really small thing that could be kind of a throwaway and could kind of pass, with no, as just like a sequence where it's like you're going from point A to point B. And instead, you're trying to inject a little bit of story, a little bit of character into those moments. And like, to me, that's a sign of like great storytelling.
Yeah, I agree. And, this is one of the films that I show in my film class for to demonstrate how good the composition is, because things are so deliberately set up. I mean, obviously, one of the big shots is, just the dinosaur's foot in that left-hand side of the screen. It basically fills the entire shot. And we talk about, most important thing is the biggest thing. Like, what's the most important thing? It's clearly that shot. And it's such a dynamic and amazing shot. That, and, when the T-Rex comes down into the Jeep, and it's basically just Jaws filling the top half of the screen, and the kids. Most of the time, the camera is really close to the dinosaurs. There's only a few times where you get these kind of wide shots. We like first time we see the Brachiosaur and like the Gallimimus, I think, are about the only other times where it's not right up in it.
And I think like it's like very end with the T-Rex, the very end. Yeah.
Yeah. But for the most part, it is up close and personal with the dinosaurs, which again, they like to have the confidence in your CGI that it's going to, hold up.
Yeah.
The audience is going to look at that and go, well, that looks fake. It doesn't fall into the uncanny valley.
There's also a lot of moments, as far as like camera, like direction. There's a lot where we talk about low camera angle, high camera angle, denoting like power. One of my favorite examples is when the two kids are in the kitchen running away, and I think there's two velociraptors. Not only is there some good composition, and one thing I like point out is like when you're watching that scene, it creates a sort of tension just through the visual of it, because you can see the danger, you can see the kids, the way the camera is placed, you can see like everything. You can see, you don't have to move, you don't have to cut, you don't have to do anything. The audience can watch the actors in the bottom right hand corner and the velociraptors in the top left, and you can see them like kind of crossing, and like that right there is building tension just through the placement of the camera, where you can see what's going on. But then also you get moments where the camera will look down on the kids and look up at the velociraptors. And it's very, very clear from a visual language standpoint about like the dinosaurs have all the power. The kids are just trying to like scrape by. And so like, and there's other moments throughout the film of this, but it's like this movie is a very good example of using cinematography that's not, I personally would say it's not super flashy. It's not like go out and grab your attention. It's more subtle, but it is doing everything that we talk about with camera placement, with composition, with movement to show those things, to tell that story, which I think is to me, it's kind of the sign of a master at work. You can use the visual language without drawing too much attention to it.
Yeah, and intermixed with that too, you have some great close-ups too. I was thinking in that scene you have the shot of the raptor claw, just to kind of re-emphasize how dangerous they are and what they're in for, and of course that the shot of the ripples in the glass of water.
Yeah.
No.
And that's also a great use of prop, right?
Yeah.
And it reminded me immediately of the floating barrels from Jaws, of using like some inanimate, ordinary object as like a signal for fear. And I was like, it works so good. It's great.
Yeah, so just mixing up those things. And it's not, like you said, it's not really flashy, but there are, it's because they don't overuse it that things like that shot of the raptor claw or the water or the extreme close up on Samuel Jackson's cigarette butt, right? Just the super long ash too, that you're just holding that tension is just masterfully done.
Well, and it just makes me think of like Marvel's Avengers. There's one moment that we both use where all the Avengers are on the air carrier and they're all arguing. And the camera starts to pull in and twist like upside down as like the team is getting twisted. And I love that shot, but that is a very look at me, look what I'm doing, kind of thing. And I feel like there's nothing that's quite like that in the movie. To me, it feels more subtle, but it's very clearly there, which I think is really nice.
Yeah, I also wanted to point out a couple of things I noticed color wise. I mean, anytime we're talking about Spielberg, we're probably going to mention like the shadows and light. And, we have that at the beginning with the raptor in the cage right before that guy gets killed. And you also have it when Muldoon's being hunted and he's kind of half in shadow. And that just kind of adds to the mysterious.
Same with kind of Ellie when she's turning the power on.
Yep. It's just kind of half and half. You can't see enough, right? Just that little bit. And then also, contrasting that with the bright candy colored Jeeps and all the merchandise where it's kind of like, no, look, this is totally safe. Everything's fine.
Yeah.
It's so not.
Right.
But that's the way it's marketed.
But I also think it's also super brilliant to have the park not quite open yet, because for a first film, I should say, because like they go through that whole presentation with the dino DNA. And like I was thinking about this time where it's like, that's just like a pure exposition dump. That's just like, hey, here's how this happened, right? But they kind of cloak it in this like facade of, well, here's, you're going on the sewer, you're seeing how the park is safe, which also kind of creates this tension within the group because they're trying to decide, is this park actually safe? You got the lawyer, you've got, Malcolm, who's the mathematician, chaos magician, and you've got the two scientists, and then of course Richard Hammond, right? And like they all have like different expertises and different perspectives, and like it's just interesting how like just taking Alan Grant when he gets to the park and he sees the Brontosaurus or whatever for the first time, and Spielberg has that great shot where the actors have that wonder on their face. And the camera just kind of lingers on them just for a moment. And you can see the expression that they have, the amazement, the wonder, the happiness. And he goes from that, right? And it develops and it changes. And then I think that like, it's just such an interesting setup that the movie has of having someone like, he could never in a million years imagine meeting a real life dinosaur. And then that dream comes true. And then that dream becomes a nightmare, and there's like that progression for the characters.
Awesome. Anything else you want to talk about in cinematography before we talk about sound?
The only thing I wanted to mention is I found one shot like particularly interesting that I never thought about before. When they go to the raptor pen and they feed the cow or the steer, whatever it is. Yeah. But then when they're like they actually show like kind of the perspective from inside the cage, which I thought was kind of interesting. And I think it's just so you can see the characters' reactions. But then they just have like brush and they just shake it in front of the camera. And like, I could imagine like extra, not extras, but like crew just standing on the side waving the things around as fast as they could. And then it's like, that's the shot. And it would seem so silly, but it actually works. And I think that's the context of the shot, right? What's kind of happening. It's scary and gruesome without being like gory, if that makes sense.
It does.
And so like I was like, that's just kind of an interesting way to shoot that. Like I never would have thought about that. And it just kind of falls into the background most of the time when I see this movie. But it does lead me into the sound, because I think the velociraptors, the sounds they make are incredibly terrifying. And the sound of the T-Rex is ferocious. It's pretty amazing and pretty iconic, I think, at this point, the sounds that they make.
Yeah, I had the raptor scream. It almost sounds mechanical to me.
Yeah.
But it's not. It's, you know, that and the T-Rex are both mixes of natural sounds just blended together. So there's, you know, a little bit where it feels familiar. You can almost place it. I think the raptor scream has some like dolphin in it and some other things that you're like, it just feels authentic because I've heard these sounds before, just not in this combination.
Right. No, I totally get that, because it feels like an animal sound. Mm-hmm. Just not like any animal that you like have heard before. And it's kind of very, I think, very similar to Star Wars in a sense. The sound effects, they feel familiar, even though they're not necessarily.
Yeah, between that and then I had just, you know, the thumping of the foot coming down. That's just, which pairs nicely with, of course, that shot of the water glass. You know, you don't see it, and you hear it way before you see it.
Yeah.
You know, it's almost like this movie, you could get away with not even showing the dinosaurs. Just between the characters' reactions and first-person shots of the dinos, it almost would work. There's so much of that. Mm-hmm. It's already terrifying. You know, and I was thinking, have you read the book? Have you read Jurassic Park, the novel?
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. Mm-hmm. If it was to be a straight-up adaptation, it'd probably be an R-rated film. And so,
yeah, very hard R,
right? Because it's super violent.
It is, yes.
And so I was thinking, as you were talking about, you know, the velociraptor eating the cow, like we don't see that, and so our imagination fills in those gaps, fills in the gaps. And so if we were to show that, there would, you know, it'd be easy to show all that stuff, and then you're just not getting away with a PG-13 rating.
Mm-hmm. So. Well, and I think that restraint there, I think, works to the benefit of the fear factor, just like with Jaws. I mean, it's the same idea, right? You don't really see Jaws for quite a while. You hear his motif, you hear kind of obviously like the, you know, water splashing, people screaming, things like that, but you don't see Jaws until much later in the film. And it's very similar to this, where it's like they're clearly doing the same thing with the T-Rex. They have the goat out there, everyone's waiting. And it's like you're building some of the expectation, some of the tension, while at the same time, also it's feeding that tension within the narrative, because Hammond and the people in the, you know, command center are like, this sucks. The tour is not working. There's no tour, and they haven't seen any dinosaurs. And so it's like there's different levels of like plot and tension being built. And that's where I'm like, it's so good. There's a lot to talk about.
Yeah, you mentioned motif, and there's a couple of leitmotifs in this film. There's the Journey to the Island song, which they play when they approach. Yeah, I love that. When they're approaching the island, is kind of the first time you hear it in the helicopter. You also hear it when they come into the park the first time, and the big doors open. And then you hear it at the end when the T-Rex comes in and saves them from the raptors. I'm sure there's a few other times, but those are kind of the main things. Which is kind of this feeling of newness and excitement as you go through.
Yeah.
And then there's this relief, you know, at the end. And then you also have the theme from Jurassic Park. Nice name, appropriately named. Which I think is, you hear that it's kind of a slow, kind of majestic theme you hear throughout.
Yeah. And it's a lot more peaceful.
Yeah.
And it's like just those two, because those are the two, you hear them, you instantly think of Jurassic Park, like every time. And the first one is so adventure, right? You're going out seeking adventure. And the other one, the theme for Jurassic Park is this, it's just more peaceful, you know, it's more mellow, and it's kind of an interesting choice, you know, for John Williams to have those two.
Yeah,
Because
there's like a nostalgia to that now.
Yeah.
The second one.
But I think it'd be very easy to go all action, all excitement with that score. And the fact that he chose something that's more peaceful, more mellow, more not introspective, but it feels different. And so I think it's an interesting choice to do that for him.
Yeah, the music is super deliberate in this because there's a lot of places where there's not music, like the T-Rex scene. Like you're just waiting, which only adds to it because you're like, I don't know what I'm supposed to be feeling here. There's just nothing, and then all of a sudden you hear the goat bleeding, and then you hear the thump. You're like, it's the power transfer. No, it's something else.
Yeah.
So that being restrained in the music too is another underappreciated thing for Williams. I think sometimes his lack of choosing to not put music in places.
Well, I also think that it emphasizes, it's a magnifying glass on the sound that is there. Because one thing that we talk about is sometimes you see with your ears in movies, like your attention is drawn by what is making noise. So if you are sitting in a cafe, but you hear the outside, that's what you're focused on. If you hear the inside of the cafe, that's what you're focused on. And so when you don't have that music, which is kind of your emotional cue for the audience, you're kind of left with like, what do I hear? Which is, again, it's kind of mirroring what the characters are feeling, right? They don't have music. They're, heightened danger. They're trying to figure out what's going on. So kind of a nice little connection that we have as audience to the characters too.
Yeah. Another thing with that too, I had under vocal sounds. You mentioned the DNA video, which is kind of a meta way to explain things to us and also to the characters. You also have the exposition going on in the Jeep as they drive around, which it's interesting a little bit. We're getting to find out what dinosaurs are supposed to be there, but there's no payoff for it, and so it kind of serves the purpose of exposition, but also it sets up the disappointment that we're not seeing them. So we're looking around, and then it doesn't happen.
There's nothing.
We look around, it doesn't happen. And so when it finally does, it kind of you're like, but I didn't get a clue that it was going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. What did you think of the performances?
Well, I mean, as I alluded to earlier, I think that they're great. When I saw this movie the first time, I don't know if I was familiar with Jeff Goldblum. I hadn't seen who's the one that plays Alan Grant? Oh, Sam Neill. I hadn't seen Sam Neill in anything, so I didn't know who he was. And so I think that probably just kind of washed over me a little bit. Now I watch this and we're talking about reaction shots. Like I feel like they are some of the best special effects in the film. They're the ones that, the actors are. They pull us in by their reactions to it. And I love the witty banter between them. I feel like they believe it. That they're actually seeing dinosaurs. It doesn't feel like anybody is, it'd be really easy to slip into melodramatic with this, but it feels real. And, I think their performances are just enough. There's some a little bit wacky. I mean, Jeff Goldblum's character is obviously a little off,
a little over the top, but that's kind of like meant.
It's
like,
Jeff Goldblum.
Yeah.
But they feel like they're all totally in the pocket.
One of the moments I noticed this time around was when they first see the Brontosaurus, and it's Ellie Sattler, Alan Grant, and Richard Hammond. They all get out of the Jeeps and they're all like walking towards them. And there's a moment where it's like a super wide shot where you see the dinosaur and you see the three little people. And Alan Grant and Ellie Sattler are like hyperventilating, and you can kind of see that in their actions. And Richard Hammond just has his cane and he's just standing there, where it's like even little things like that are showing like the amazement or the kind of pride that John Hammond has. And I think I said Richard Hammond, but it's John Hammond. But it's like you can see that like even far away in those wide shots, the physical acting that they're doing. I think the acting is all fantastic. And it doesn't get better, in my opinion, than the kids screaming in terror at the T-Rex, because I think that's perfect. The wonder and amazement that several of the characters have when they see the dinosaurs for the first time. Those two are kind of the things that pop out in my mind as like bringing you right to that moment within the film.
Yeah, I also really like the scene where they're having lunch and they really start getting into the philosophical discussion of whether you should. Malcolm has that great line about scientists being so preoccupied with whether they didn't stop to think if they should.
Right.
Alan Grant makes the comment about, humans and dinosaurs being thrown back together. We have no idea what's going to happen.
Right.
It really does, it emphasizes kind of your point from earlier of like, this is not supposed to be a good thing.
Yeah.
Why are we continuing this?
Well, and then you have the different tensions, like Geronimo, the lawyer. He's referred to as the blood-sucking lawyer, and he's like, thank you.
Right.
And he's like, people will pay whatever we want for this. Like, we're going to be rich. And like for the filthy poors, we'll have a coupon day. And it's like, you can see like his perspective. He's got the money bags in his eyes. Hammond is like, no. This isn't just for the ultra rich. This is for everybody. So you can see it's like, okay, he has coming from this like altruistic, but ultimately like misguided sense of altruism, right? And then it's like you can just see that. And so it's like you can see the differences in the personalities and the like different character wants. And you can see that just in like that little lunch scene. So that's also one of my favorite scenes.
Yeah, I think of Hammond just repeatedly saying too, spared no expense.
Yes.
As if that justifies everything.
Exactly.
Right? Money was going to finish, we'll fix all of these issues. Doesn't really matter. He's like trying to convince himself that he's done the right thing.
Well, and he has it to add on to that. He has that line, all major theme parks had delays. When they opened Disneyland in 1956, nothing worked. And it's like, yeah, but the Pirates of the Caribbean didn't kill everybody.
Yeah.
So it's like, again, it's that misguided, it's not bad. It's not evil. I mean, you could argue the one evil person's the lawyer. Debatable, but I think, it's like,
he does run away from the kids. So,
so it's like, but even Hammond, he's like, he's wrong and he doesn't realize it. And so we've already kind of bled into the lines. The acting is, I think, fantastic. I think the only thing I would add to that is that even the dinosaurs have a little bit of personality, which is really fun when you get that in there. Did you have any other comments about the characters, or did you have any other lines that really stood out to you?
For some reason, as just kind of speaking of characterization, the exchange this time that I watched that caught me was when Ellie's going through the big pile of dino poop, and Malcolm steps away and he looks at Grant and says, "She's tenacious," and Grant says, "You have no idea."
Yeah,
just a great character beat there. Speaks volumes about their relationship, and it's funny to see Malcolm interacting with her. He's way too his lack of personal space just kind of slays me. He's just touching her hair and taking her hand and just being.
Although she doesn't seem to mind.
No.
So I think that's okay. Did you know that Laura Dern was only 23 in this film?
I did not know that.
Yeah. I didn't know that either.
Older than that. Yeah, I did read something the other day about the 20-year age gap, right? Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah. She looks, and not in any bad way, just the way she's like dressed is more adult looking,
Yeah.
I always thought she was younger, but not 20 years younger. It felt more like a 5, 6, 7 year age gap type thing, like mentor, student, close friend relationship between her and Sam Neill's character.
Yeah, I mean, that reminds me a bit of like Carrie Fisher in the original Star Wars. Like she's 19 and she doesn't feel 19.
No.
She feels like she might be 30 in the way that she's just self-possessed that way.
Exactly. I think it's that the way she carries herself has a confidence that doesn't feel like they're as young as they actually are.
Yeah. Yeah. No offense to Laura Dern.
No,
we don't say you look old. You just feel more mature.
Very confident.
Yeah. There you go. Confident.
I think that's what, like, ultimately, that's what I'm trying to get at is like,
yeah. No, yeah. Sorry, Laura Dern fans. No, she has agency, right? She
Yeah.
absolutely is self-possessed, and like she's not a damsel in distress at all.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, she even has that line to Hammond about, we can talk about, sexism and
Yes. I mean,
the situations after the fact. Yeah,
it addresses it directly.
Yeah.
I do love the line, clever girl. Right
Yes.
before the hunter, I think Muldoon is killed by the raptors.
Yep.
That's
not
fantastic.
the one he's looking at, the
Yes.
ones from the side, like
Yep.
Grant predicted from earlier on.
So that's a great line. I like that character though. So I'm always disappointed when he dies. Because he's one of the few ones who sees what Hammond is doing and sees the truth of it. And to me, he's always the person who's like, you might think, how could you ever participate in something like that? Clearly, this was a terrible idea. And it's like, he's a good example of someone who has good intentions, who's probably thinking, I'm going to make this as safe as I can, right? And if I don't, they're going to get someone who isn't as experienced as me. And it doesn't work out.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, he is kind of like, somebody's going to have to do it. I'm the best option for this,
right?
Kind of thing. And he knows that when he goes into that jungle there, he's going to die. He feels pretty confident.
Yeah. I think he's at least certain that's a very real possibility.
Yeah. But I do have to say that pretty much everything Malcolm says is funny to me. He's just larger than life. He's just being Jeff Goldblum here.
Have you seen The Lost World?
I have.
Okay.
And read the book.
Yeah.
Yes.
He's fantastic in that too.
Yeah, I'm glad they brought him back. Spoiler alert, in the book, which is really old, in like 1990, Malcolm dies.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And Hammond's an evil guy, which I like this kind of misguided version of Hammond versus the megalomaniac.
I think both work.
Yeah.
But I do like the misguided one because that also feels more true to reality.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Where it's like, no one's just like a cartoon villain. He's like, it's not that you're not, trying to do something good. It's just you're going about it the wrong way.
Yeah. Fits with the theme too. It's kind of that whole, the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Yes.
Like you're just messing with things you shouldn't be. And so,
yeah,
thematically, it's much more interesting.
Yeah, I agree with that for sure.
I love the fact that he's all in white, though. That is kind of interesting.
Yeah,
that's traditionally associated with he's a good character. He's all in white. He's a grandfatherly. He played Santa right around this time too, and on 34th Street. And Malcolm's basically just a rock star in black leather.
Mm-hmm. He's a mathematician.
And then one thing I really enjoy on later viewings that I never caught for the longest time is that little boy Tim has basically modeled his look after Alan Grant, that he's wearing like a blue shirt and khakis.
Interesting.
Just like Grant is wearing a blue shirt and khakis, and he even has like the little like kerchief around his neck.
Yeah.
It's kind of fun.
I never caught that, but now that you mention it, like I can see that. Along those lines, the little kid Tim, he's like a really important part of Alan Grant's character arc of learning to appreciate kids, which fits in with the Spielberg like family movie type deal,
Mm-hmm.
But I always enjoy that there's more arc, there's more character development in this film. It's not just action, and I think that's a little bit with the newest ones has fallen into that trap a little bit of spectacle without the same emphasis on character and development. And we're not talking about those films, but what I do mean to say is that I think the original Jurassic Park is this beautiful blend of both action and horror and family and relationships and development.
Yeah, I agree. I think you see that at the end too, where he's sitting there with the kids and he looks out and he sees the pelican. It's he's got like at peace about that, and it's kind of like, I look at that too. That he's so interested in like dead things and bones and old dead things that he's not really into life and experiencing society. So he's kind of opening himself up to those things because of having that near death experience.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect reading on that.
So, locations. A lot of it's shot on location in Hawaii.
Yeah.
My favorite factoid from this is that there was a hurricane that happened. Hurricane Aniki happened while they were filming this, and they lost a day of shooting, but also got footage of the hurricane and used it in the film. That is fantastic.
Yeah. Taking disaster, turning it into art. It's a pretty stunning location. I mean, as far as like the location, it feels exotic without feeling alien. I just very topical, but I just saw the trailer for the new Avatar movie, and that's very exotic looking. This very much is like, yeah, we're on Earth. There's like the concrete steel, kind of design where it's like, it feels very much like a safari park in a way, with Jurassic theme, but it feels very down to earth. Like it could happen. And I think that's kind of a fun way to have approached the film.
Yeah, I think about like that visitor center too. Once you get in there, I'm like, if you've ever been to a theme park at all, like Disneyland or what have you, like that looks familiar. That feels like a place that you could actually go to, which only lends itself to how scary this is. That if this was a real place, it kind of feels like it could be a real place. This could happen. You already mentioned the kitchen with the shiny surfaces, which is another just awesome, very sterile and cold place that actually gets used for part of the plot device where the raptor runs into the mirrored image of her, which is another fun little thing that happens in there. But that's on a set. That's in the Universal lot. But most of it is in a place that feels like Isla Nublar.
Yeah.
I also always enjoyed the door handle line. They did that shot of the door handle. I'm gonna put this under set decoration just because I really like the line where she says, "Yeah, unless they figure out how to open doors," and then they immediately cut to opening the door. Just brilliant.
That's a little bit with the dinosaurs having a little personality to them too. Up in the air ducts. I mean, that's a great use of set when they're dangling off the dinosaur bones hanging from the ceiling. Like, that's what I mean by it. It's got a lot of action too. Like, you can kind of see those action set pieces in most films. And it's like, yeah, it's got all of the thrills, and it's got like a message, and it's got family, and just again over and over again, it's kind of got everything you'd want from a film.
Yeah. That big banner falls down, when dinosaurs ruled the earth, like on the nose.
Yeah.
This is a reminder.
Which I'm okay with. Like,
yeah, no, I'm totally fine with it too.
End the film. It's like, okay, sure.
Yeah. I mean, it's a clever film. They can be a little heavy-handed at points.
Yeah.
That's just fine. Some cool props in this one. I really like the shaving cream embryo container thing. That's fun. The mosquito cane is cool.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Like that a lot. Samuel L. Jackson's arm, I put that as a prop.
I suppose. Yeah, I can see that.
And then, of course, the only thing, in my opinion, that dates this film are the computers.
Sure.
Because they're super dated. But to be honest, like, I don't even remember computers that ran those systems.
Yeah.
So I look at it and it's like, this be a parallel universe as far as I'm concerned.
Sure. I also think that, like, the computer is the one thing that can kind of fade to the background because it's not really a film about the computers.
No, not at all.
Like they play an important part. So it's like you definitely notice them, but you can kind of let them slide a little bit.
Yeah.
I do think like the shaving cream thing when it falls in the mud and it gets like covered up is just like a nice visual way of being like, yeah, Nedry's dead. Like that's gone. Kind of same with like the raptor claw when Grant like throws it away. He's like, I'm done with it. So a couple nice little uses of the props.
Yeah, definitely. Anything else setting design before we move on?
No, I think we talked about everything I wanted to cover.
Yeah. I always forget that Samuel L. Jackson's in this movie until I start watching it. It doesn't have a huge part, but it's a memorable part.
Immediately recognizes his voice.
Yeah. Yeah. Hold on to your butts.
Yeah.
I mentioned before under world building. I just had that it doesn't feel like it's so outlandish. It feels like it could be possible.
Mhm.
Like maybe not tomorrow, but it feels like there are steps that could be taken from where we are here to that.
Yeah. And I think that lends to the power of the message too. The fact that it potentially could happen. It feels like this could be a real story.
We also talked about Grant's growth as a character. Do you think any of the other characters grew, or is that pretty much, I think the rest of them fairly static in your opinion?
Yeah, I do think the rest are fairly static. I think there's a lot of character that's revealed in the film, but I do think that's also different than development. I would say by the end of the film, I think Hammond has been disillusioned. So I think there's some development there, although I think that kind of gets walked back with the second one with The Lost World. I can't remember if Hammond sanctions that event or not, but I think by the end he's misguided and realizes that he was misguided. So I think there's a little bit of development there.
Yeah, you mentioned revealed too, and I'm thinking specifically of Ian Malcolm, where he's just kind of a snarky, smart aleck guy, and then you see him being actually very brave.
Yeah, he does care.
Pulls the T-Rex away from the kids.
Exactly.
So it's not anything that is different than what we've seen. We just haven't seen that layer of him yet.
Exactly. And so I think, if you don't have that development, if you at least reveal character, I think that's really important. That can be enough. So.
Awesome. Okay. Final thoughts then on Jurassic Park.
Honestly, like I said at the beginning, this is one of my just 10 out of 10s. I love this film. I watch it, rewatch it every once in a while. And it's always fun coming back to it. I always forget little things, and it's always fun to come back and visit this world again. So not much other than that, other than just I absolutely love the movie.
Yeah, I wanted to mention that this is one I just showed to my film class. They showed them the whole thing, and we had previously watched the first Harry Potter movie. We watched Rocky, and we watched Superman the movie, and got kind of just mediocre reactions to all three of those. And then when I told them we were watching Jurassic Park, they all got very excited, which speaks to the staying power of it, and to a younger generation that was not alive when this came out, that this is the one that really grabbed them. And I thought that was pretty cool. And let them know that we were doing Jurassic Park for the next episode, and so I was tracking things along with them and kind of walking them through. So that was kind of a fun experience. Jurassic Park made a ton of money. It's over $1 billion at this point. It won 3 Academy Awards: Best Sound Editing, Best Sound Mixing, Best Visual Effects. Also, not surprising at all. Same ceremony, Spielberg. He made Schindler's List the same year. Same editor, Michael Kahn, and John Williams all worked on that film. They all won Oscars for that film. So it's kind of like he competed against himself.
Yeah.
Because I think the rest of those things are phenomenal in this film too. Like the editing is great, and obviously the music is great. But what are you going to do? We get 2 great films the same year from Spielberg.
Yeah, I do think Spielberg is possibly the best director of our generation.
Yeah.
And it's kind of crazy to think Schindler's List and Jurassic Park same year.
Yeah. So my last thing I wanted to say too is just that, speaking of Spielberg and his friend George Lucas, that this was in a lot of ways the kind of the impetus for Lucas deciding that, yes, I can go back and make the Star Wars prequels. And so part of the legacy for this film is those films, as well as having a whole generation of kids saying, I want to be a paleontologist.
Yeah.
Because that was definitely a thing that came out of this as well.
Oh, for sure. I think, I can remember. I think your little story about the kids this year, like people love dinosaurs. Like they just do. So as we close, we just want to say thank you so much for listening. If you would like to connect with us, you can find us on Twitter and Facebook. Email us at readingbetweenreels@gmail.com or use the SpeakPipe app on our website.
If you enjoyed the show, please leave us a review on your favorite podcast catcher. We'd love to hear your feedback, and it really helps us get the word out about the podcast. And if you haven't yet, please join our Facebook group. It's a safe place to share your thoughts and discuss all things related to movies.
And one last thing, our next episode will be a review of Attack the Block. Send us an email or voicemail about your favorite moments from Attack the Block, and we'll share them on the next episode.